Good evening and welcome to a Roadmap to Recovery webinar. We will get started in a minute. We'll just give folks a chance to sign on. And tonight we'll be talking about resolving claim disputes with a focus on Colorado and California. For folks who are joining us from another state, we'll do our best to answer your questions based on sort of best practices as we know it. And then we'll be referring you to our website for more details on Oregon law and regulations. Okay, we're going to get underway. I'm Amy Bach, and I'm very pleased that you were able to join us. Sorry for the circumstances that made it necessary for you to get this information, but glad that you're here to get some tips and pointers from our special guests and myself and my team. Quick reminder about our organization. We're a nonprofit, 501c3, which means that we're officially recognized by the government for our charitable work and the educational services we provide. We are rated platinum by the entity that evaluates nonprofits. We have been a trusted resource and a respected voice for you as an insurance consumer in all 50 states for 30 years. We're not for profit, not for sale. We don't take funding from insurance companies, so we can give you independent information that you can rely on, that it's in your interests because we are consumer advocates and you are a consumer. We're funded by donations and grants. And much of our work gets done by what we call Team Up. Professional staff, myself, Valerie Brown, Carolyn Winter, who are here with us tonight, our government and nonprofit partners. We have two government partners with us tonight, Tracy Garceau from the Colorado Division of Insurance and Tony Signorelli from the, only said your name 100 times, from the California Department of Insurance. And then we have volunteers, hundreds of volunteers around the country, many of whom are survivors of previous disasters to the ones that y'all are recovering from. And we also have a lot of volunteers who are professionals with an orientation to help the consumer. That includes damage and repair, rebuild cost estimators, lawyers, public adjusters, CPAs, tax experts, financial planning folks, construction and real estate. So a lot of the materials that you will find on our website have been put together with input from our volunteers using their expertise. Tonight's program is through our Roadmap to Recovery, through which we've been guiding wildfire impacted people and communities since 1991. That's our book that we publish, and hopefully you got your hands on it at some point. And it's a wonderful resource still after many years of being in circulation. Just a reminder that we're here to give you general guidance, not legal advice. And our speakers are volunteering their time as educators. So today's presenters, myself, I'm an attorney. I'm a co-founder of United Policyholders. I've been an insurance consumer advocate my whole career. Val Brown, our senior program officer, a long time social services professional with a lot of experience in disaster recovery. Tony Signorelli, who is the deputy commissioner at the California Department of Insurance, overseeing the hotline that is available for you to call and get answers. And then Tracy Garceau, lead insurance analyst at the Colorado Division of Insurance. That's me, a little bit about me, more than you need to know. Just know that I know what I'm talking about, more or less. And this work is very important to me because I've always felt very strongly that as a person who invested your money in buying insurance, that you should be entitled to the full measure of the protection that you paid for. And in my previous career as a lawyer, where I would go to bat for people in court, that guided me. And since I've been running UP, my conviction that you have already paid for good coverage and good claim service, and you should not have to be going through hassles, has driven a lot of the work that we do to try to remove obstacles that are in your path. I'm going to let Val say hello on her own to break this up.
Hi, so I'm Valerie Brown. I'm UP's Senior Program Officer. I work in the Road Metro Recovery Program. And for the most part, I'll be in the background providing links and resources through the Q&A and also in the chat.
Okay. Tony, if you want to just sort of give a thumbnail of how you're involved in post-disaster claims.
Yeah, Amy, sure. Tony Signorelli, Deputy Commissioner for California, Department of Insurance. I've been in the insurance industry for about 35 years. Also an attorney, but that's not my current position. My staff handles consumer complaints. We can answer your questions online or on the phone. And we also do market conduct exams of insurance companies. And my staff also goes out to the scenes of wildfires and local assistance centers and helps give people information and helps them along and getting advance payments and getting their questions answered so they can, recover quickly.
Thank you. And as you'll hear as we go through the evening, we always recommend that you, as a resident of your state, that you take advantage of the free resources that are available to you through the agency in your state that oversees insurance companies. So in California, that's Tony's agency, and they do offer quite a bit of free help to people in problem solving. And that's the toll-free number for Tony's agency's hotline, and then the website address for their site. Tracy, if you want to give us a little thumbnail of your role in helping consumers in the aftermath of disasters.
Yeah, good evening. Thanks, Amy, for having me again. So I'm the lead analyst for the Property and Casualty Consumer Services section of the Division of Insurance. That's a mouthful, but what we're consumer advocates. We investigate insurance claims, policy issues, any insurance related issue. We are also available by phone and by email, so we educate as well as investigate. And that's how we conduct our oversight for the bigger picture for the market conduct. So we've been quite busy with the fires. We're really making an effort to be out front and more engaged than we have been in this latest disaster, being so widespread and so fast. It's been quite a week, but we are still handling complaints from older fires, and we haven't lost sight or lost any commitment to those folks either.
Yeah. So last night, Tracy and I were on a marathon town hall forum for folks impacted by the Marshall Fire. I'm guessing we probably don't have people from that fire with us tonight. But if we do, because I know there's a forum that the county is offering, but if we do have Marshall folks, welcome. And of course, we are so sorry for the circumstances that have brought you here, but so glad that you're availing yourself of the free information and support that we are offering. So here is the Colorado Division's website, toll-free number. For those of you in Oregon, later in the program, we'll be showing the same information for your agencies. But just know that we've done a couple of programs in the past where we had people from the Oregon Department and the Washington Department of Insurance. And just like Tracy and Tony, they're very anxious to help you without charge. Oops, I think I skipped one. So we're going to be just going over options and strategies for resolving claim disputes tonight. And if you have questions, you can ask them in the Q&A. Section, and if you have any problem with that, I guess Hopefully you won't. That's on your little bar, the black bar there. You click on that and you type your question in. So the main message, of course, we want to get out in the beginning here is that the best way to resolve a dispute related to an insurance claim is to be informed about what your rights are and how things are supposed to go. And there are three primary sources that dictate how your insurance company should be handling your claim. There are your state's insurance laws. There are your state's regulations, bulletins that the state agency may have put out recently or in the past. And then, of course, the language in the policy that you paid for, including all the bells and whistles you may have, endorsements, riders, et cetera, or just the basic protection that your insurer sold you. And something called the covenant of good faith and fair dealing, which is an invisible concept that courts read into a policy as if it were written right in there. And basically what it means is that your insurance company is legally required to behave reasonably. That's kind of the essence of it, that they're not supposed to put their financial interests ahead of yours, or intentionally withhold benefits that are due. And the reason we mention it is, we certainly don't like to point anybody who's been impacted by a disaster in the direction of a lawsuit, because most people are just wanting to kind of get on with their lives, and the idea of being in a lawsuit is not very appealing. But as things stand in the real world, when large sums of money are involved, and you're dealing with a large corporation, the insurance company, sometimes the most important leverage that you have is the ability to enforce the covenant of good faith, the ability to enforce your rights, and to get the insurance company to straighten up and fly right if they are not behaving properly. So couple quick things. Documentation is so key when you are trying to get a fair shake from an insurer. That means being clear when you communicate with your insurance company, putting your requests in writing, keeping a journal so you've got a nice paper trail of what they did, what you did, what was said, and then being clear as possible about what you need and when you need it. We really recommend keeping not just a journal, but a log of contacts, who you talk to. Here's an example of a good log. And then our organization offers all kinds of free tools on our website. And a lot of them have been donated to us by people who lost a home. So for example, this is a spreadsheet that one of our volunteers created. He adapted it to keep track. Sometimes the insurance company will be sending you checks and you're not quite sure what bucket they're for. This is a tool for keeping track of that. And again, that's free of charge at our website. This is just an example of it being filled out. Okay. Journaling and a good paper trail will really keep you as much as possible on a kind of a level footing with the adjusters plural that you are working with. And a lot of our message to you is that the squeaky wheel gets paid. It's kind of like a lot of other things in life. There's a little bit of a luck of the draw with adjusters. But if you get one that's, not being particularly friendly or cooperative, it's more important than ever that you have a good paper trail of your efforts to keep things on track with them. And that means using good grammar, communicating to them that you're going to get a fair outcome here, and that you are prepared to enforce your rights in that way. And that doesn't mean being argumentative. That means being businesslike and being as specific as you can about things. When you're negotiating with an insurer, you want to keep it professional as possible. There's no harm in asking for flexibility and concessions. They can always say no. So I want to ask Tony if I think one of the biggest examples that we've seen of a concession or flexibility is getting an insurer to pay more on your contents, I'm sorry, to waive the requirement that you itemize your contents inventory and just to pay you without putting you through all that hassle. Could you just give us a quick hit on that one?
Yeah, and for California, what we've done in the past is the commissioner of California would send a notice out to the insurance companies requesting, because the law didn't require, that they provide all the policyholders an advance payment for their contents without having to do an inventory. And if you do an inventory, you'll get the rest of your coverage, but you'll get a certain amount, 50%, 75, or even up to 100% with some insurance companies. And many insurance companies agree to that. And so that's an example of something, if you don't have it in your policy, you could ask for it and see if they'll give it to you. We made that request. Many insurance companies complied with it. Recently, a law was passed to require insurance companies to give policyholders in California a large chunk of their contents coverage without having to do an inventory. And so we can give you more information on that if they want to contact us.
And then Tracy, in Colorado, right, we've got the 30% that the insurers have to pay automatically on for the contents. I've been hearing a lot of buzz, and of course we encourage people to ask for more. And I think those discussions are going on right now. Yes.
Yes, they are. And thanks to the East Troublesome folks reaching out to their legislator, they're really getting action. So it hasn't been introduced formally, but there is legislation coming to address the concerns that they raised. And I think all of Colorado is going to be thankful to them when this is passed.
Yep. Okay, so I know we've already got a question and we're going to get to that in a minute. I just want to finish some of these sort of fundamental best practices that we recommend. Negotiation with an insurance company, as I just said, it's all about being clear about what you want and then bringing leverage, whatever leverage you have, right? So here's an example of negotiating by paper trail for somebody who the insurer has, where there's a disparity in the loss estimate, meaning the insurer is saying we owe you X, and the homeowner's got an estimate that says it's Y in terms of the cost of putting the house back. And this is the kind of, factual communication we encourage you to do, where you give them the dollar amount so the adjuster can see it right in front of their face. Typically adjusters have way more claims assigned to them than they can handle timely. So making things as easy as possible for the adjuster is a helpful thing, and telling them when you expect them to pay. So people, underinsurance is a big problem everywhere we go. For all the years we've been conducting surveys after disasters, the survey responses pretty much are consistently the same, that 2/3 of the people who lost their homes found themselves underinsured. So this is an example of some of the strategies people have used, and with some success in many cases, to get the insurers to pay more, and not in all cases. We have a whole section of our website on remedying underinsurance, but this is just your first attempt, if you are underinsured, to try to get every dime that the insurer owes on the policy, since you're underinsured, get them to just pay it, so that you can bob and weave and figure something out. So I want to get to the first question before we go any further. Ray asks, my house was a total loss in the Cameron Peak fire. So this is your neck of the woods, Tracy. I've exceeded my policy limits in the rebuild, even though the rebuild is smaller. Is that the end of the discussion, or is there an argument for the company to pay beyond policy limits? If so, how do I approach that discussion? Tracy, you want to take a crack at that?
I wonder if Ray received all of his policy limits, right? Because coverage A is a particular limit, and then there's extended replacement cost potentially, and then you have your debris removal and trees. And so all of those coverages, I would want you to see that you received every dollar of those, not leaving a dollar on the table. So that's what I would be interested in seeing, if there's anything left. And we can help with that. Some of the claims that are still lingering, what we've been able to do is write to the company and get specifics on what coverages you had, what has been paid out, is there any balance left? If there is, what do you have to do to get it? So that you know right in front of you with a piece of paper what you have to do, or if that's the end of your benefits. And unfortunately, we can't nudge them to get the policy limits increased. But what we are hoping to do going forward is to make the process of obtaining all of those benefits easier.
Yes. And then, Tony, we've gone many around in California, trying to help people who are underinsured through no fault of their own. In this situation, this is a tough one. If the expenses of replacing the home were above your limits and the insurer hadn't already agreed that in some way they were going to extend benefits. So any other thoughts here on this one?
Well, in addition to what Tracy suggested for cover out of the same holds for California, let us take a look at it, see if there's any additional coverages left. With regard to getting coverage above policy limits, as you know, Amy, case law in California, the courts have not sided with consumers on that issue. And so it's a really difficult challenge for consumers to get payment above their policy limits. However, we have been able to do that in some cases where we've noticed mistakes by the insurance company, and either the square footage or the agent makes a mistake, or there's some reliance that they provided to you as to what that you were fully covered, that sort of thing. If there's that kind of paper trail, in those cases, we are able to get insurance companies to step up, but that is more of a rare situation, but we'd be happy to take a look at those cases.
Yeah, thank you. And again, on our website, if you type in underinsurance or underinsured in the search box, you'll see articles, samples of lawsuits people have brought. The bottom line is, if you were underinsured through no fault of your own and you have some evidence that either insurance agent or the company, you had a conversation with them, they told you that you had enough to replace your home, and you have notes from that, or you have the emails from that can really help. But hopefully, as Tracy said, maybe there's some other pockets of coverage that didn't get paid out that might be available. So I'm going to go back here. Let's see, I'm going to go back. We're going to get to the other questions, but let me go back to the slide deck here and get through at least the strategies. Okay, so this is just here. A good paper trail provides leverage. So like in Ray's situation, one other possibility would be if the insurance company had been really jerking you around during the claim adjusting process and acting unreasonably, and you had evidence of that, that could be a basis for getting them to pay more money. But that would be something where you would need to have been documenting that. And again, it's often something that you might need to have a lawyer to help you with. But other than that, policy limits tend to be pretty tight. Okay, so the good paper trail is, you want to keep that going the whole time, because if your insurer does things that are not right, if they are dragging their feet or they give you misinformation, those are the kind of pieces of evidence that can get you the leverage to get the outcome that you want. So your personal leverage, of course, is that your life has been turned upside down by this tragedy. You're doing your best. And if you have special circumstances, of course, you want to make sure that your insurance adjuster knows about that in writing. So there's also legal and political leverage. I talked about the legal leverage of people knowing of the fact that the insurance company knows that you would be able to hire a lawyer if they had done something wrong. And so that's what we call legal leverage, right? The threat of a lawsuit. But there's also the regulations and the statutes. So those things give you leverage. Political leverage comes from, say, for example, the insurance commissioner's office, or in the case of Colorado Assembly, the Representative Claire Levy did the reform bill in 2013 on insurance. Now we've got Amabile, who's got the bill that Tracy mentioned that's pending in the legislature. And one of our hopes is that because insurance companies in Colorado know that this bill is pending in the legislature, is going to be that they will behave better on the Marshall claims than in order to just sort of take away some of the pressure to get the law passed. But anyway, so your legal and political leverage, very important. And of course the media. There's been a phenomenal amount of media attention in the aftermath of the Boulder fire, and that hopefully is going to help all those impacted get a better outcome. There was quite a bit of attention in the aftermath of the 2020 fires, East Troublesome, Cameron Peak, etc. And that's why we started working on this legislation. That there's a groundswell of support for all of you who've been impacted. So just going up the chain, we always say, give your insurance company a chance to do the right thing. But then we say, don't be a pushover, understand this is a business negotiation, and use your leverage, right? And that means the higher you go, the greater your chances of success in resolving your dispute. Filing a complaint with a state agency is incredibly important. People will sometimes, vague threats to sue are rarely effective. Just saying, I'm going to hire a lawyer is not going to scare an insurance company, but actually going to a lawyer, talking to a lawyer, going to our website, getting a little bit of a feel for what the legal protections are that your insurer may not be abiding by. Those are ways of getting leverage. Okay, so if you're having problems with the adjuster and the saying that estimating your dwelling replacement below what a contractor says, we have lots of good information on our site for remedying that situation. But the simple approach of having the adjuster sit down with the contractor and having the contractor explain his or her numbers can be extremely helpful. Filing a complaint with the DOI boosts your leverage. We feel very strongly about this. So I want to ask both of you guys a question. You can see here we cite that we did a survey, one of our surveys, where almost half the people said that they had a problem with their insurance company, but only 16% of them said that they filed a complaint. Now, we know a lot of people don't know what a DOI is or that there is one, and of course we work really hard to fix that. And so I want to ask both of you, I think a lot of people are afraid to file a complaint because they're afraid that the insurance adjuster is going to get mad at them or that sort of thing. Is that a legitimate fear? Tony or Tracy, it doesn't matter, either one of you.
It's not, and it's so timely because I spoke to someone today who that was their concern. I talked to them at the Disaster Recovery Center, and they really had an issue that we might be able to help. It's about underinsured, but the policy was only a month old, so there might be something we can do there. And I talked to her today, and she just was very concerned about retaliation, and she's felt at the mercy of the insurance company as it is and didn't want to rock the boat. So I assured her that retribution is not allowed and retaliation is not allowed. That's a hard thing to prove, right? She's like, how would I prove that? What would they do would they short me on my claim? And it's hard because they always short everybody, mostly everybody on their claim anyway. So I think that assurance to consumers that we are here. And if you feel like there's something happening with the company as a result, then you call us, right? And we will get involved immediately. We're not going to allow that to happen. So, and then I talked to a consumer earlier this morning who thought we were charging her. She's called and said, how much does it cost? I said, it doesn't cost a thing. And she was quite surprised that that didn't cost anything for us to help.
Yeah. Tony, any further thoughts on that, on the value of using your services down? Is there a downside?
Yeah, I think the one thing I would add, Amy, is that the insurance companies are used to us. I mean, they're used to us contacting them, and people with filing complaints for years. We've been working with insurance companies and their management and their claims team, and they understand these situations. And to the degree there's any retaliation, we would know about it. We would see it, because if you're shorted after you've filed the complaint, we would know whether you're getting a reasonable claim paid or they're delaying your claim, that sort of thing. And so I don't think that's a worry. And I think the pros, override the cons, and letting us take a look at it. As Tracy said, the service is free. And a lot of times we can find either resolve a delay, which is happening, which is very common, or find coverage or resolve a dispute before it has to resort to, let's say, litigation or mediation or some other formal process.
Okay.
Amy, on that, we've got 2 questions in the chat about specifically for Tony about DOI. Filing a complaint.
Yeah. Sorry. So we've got one one here. Sorry, Tony. Deborah asks, it's not really a question. She says the insurance adjuster absolutely was worse. After I filed with the DOI, became even less responsive. Of course, now 9 months later, it might be making a difference, but my adjuster definitely was retaliatory. What do we suggest?
Well, I mean, certainly let us know about it. We could look at that. Like I said, I mean, we could look at that, and if that adjuster is doing anything that he or she shouldn't be doing, then we could talk to the management. We deal directly with the management of the company. We don't deal with the adjuster. We deal with his boss's boss usually. And so we make sure that they do their due diligence in making sure that the claim is processed properly and timely. And to the degree it's not, we hold them accountable to that. So if you think someone thinks they're retaliating, let us know about it and let us look into that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We have another one from a California person. I filed a complaint with the CDOI. We're in a dispute with the insurer. So this is a lowballing, partially lowballing problem. The insurer's estimate was 1/3 of what a private builder had quoted them. And the insurer is questioning that builder's estimate. And now they're threatening to cut off their ALE. So after only paying 14 months, this is from the LNU fire. So they're trying to work with the insurer to at least get their policy limit. And the insurer told them they were quoting everything as average while we had high quality items. So it sounds like your staff told them to go back to the insurance company, possibly hire a public adjuster and or an attorney. This person feels the insurance company has worn us down, so we will just go away. So, we always tell people that, the Department of Insurance, they cannot be your lawyer. They cannot be a judge. They can only try to get the insurer to straighten up and fly right. But there are private attorneys who specialize in suing insurance companies for policyholders, and we have a number of them in our Find Help directory. But in this situation, Tony, and I'm sure, this is some information and the person wrote this anonymous, so you don't know who it is. Is there anything else other than, do you feel like this is a situation where it's a he said, she said, or should this person try your mediation program?
Well, we would offer the mediation program if it was eligible. So that's certainly an option. But I think if the person wants to not be anonymous and provide maybe UP with their information, we're happy to look at it and make sure that we've done our due diligence on our side to make sure that the insurance company did everything it's supposed to be doing here. Now, there are disputes that just can't be resolved. For example, underinsurance we mentioned earlier, as well as we're not contractors. And so we can't decide how much it's actually going to cost to rebuild a home. If there's dueling estimates, one by the insurance company, one by your own contractor. And so that does create a situation where we're not in a position to make a decision and bridge that gap with a binding decision, let's say. So we can send that case to mediation, which would be free to the consumer. And so that's another issue that if you want to contact UP, give them your information, they can circle back with me, give it to me, and I'm happy to look at it and have the officer or the officer's supervisor contact you.
Yeah. Okay. I want to answer Derek's question because he came on early and asked it. Derek asks, any advice on white waivers? My insurance requested I sign one. So a white waiver is basically it's a piece of paper that insurers often will insist that you sign when you're having settlement discussions with them, that where they may be where you're talking about them paying you some compensation. And what the white waiver basically is it says that the conversation that you're having with them is confidential and that you cannot use it as evidence down the road against them, let's say in a bad faith case or something like that. So in other words, if let's say that you have a dispute with your insurance company, you've asked them to pay above limits, or you've asked them to pay more than they were willing to pay, and they say, well, we'll have a conversation with you. You know, certainly in California, it's pretty common for insurance companies to sometimes bring a lawyer in to adjust a claim. We don't like that, but they do that. And then that lawyer might say, or the insurance adjuster might say, we'll have that conversation with you about settling this dispute, but we need you to sign this white waiver because we want to be able to have a conversation with you without worrying that you're going to throw our words back at us down the road. So it's kind of, you know, I mean, if they're asking you to sign one and you don't have a lawyer, you know, you can just know that chances are they may not have that conversation with you unless you sign that white waiver. And it doesn't really, you know, in my experience, you know, it's not going to hurt you to sign it and then have a conversation. If you want to make sure it's got limited time, that it only applies to that one conversation. Anything to add on that, Tony?
No, I mean, you said it. I mean, it's not any law that prevents an insurance company from suggesting and requesting these white waivers in order to have discussions with regard to settlements over and above what they've already decided they're going to pay, as you said. And we haven't really seen a situation where it's come back to bite anybody afterwards. Let's say either they pursued litigation and they were precluded from using sufficient evidence to support their case, that sort of thing. So we haven't really seen it come back to people in a negative way, and it has resulted in some settlements. So it's really a tough one. And if you're really uncomfortable with it, you might want to talk to an attorney to at least just have a conversation about the white waiver, if not your entire claim.
Yeah. There is a rule, there's a law that insurance companies cannot make you sign a release to pay to collect money that they already owe you, but a white waiver is something different. And the way it comes from, there's a case called White versus Western Title, which basically says that even after you file a lawsuit against an insurance company, they still have a duty to behave in good faith to you. And so that's why insurers, they call it a white waiver, because they don't want you using whatever conversation, settlement discussion that you might have with them. They don't want you bringing that in, you know, up as further evidence of bad faith. So that's the deal there. So, okay. So this is a California question. We're planning to buy instead of rebuild. We're a total loss from the CZU fire in Santa Cruz. I'm so sorry to hear that. How do we get the insurance company to pay the 25% home protector, which I assume is the extended coverage that they have? Tony, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, the law is pretty clear. I mean, it's very clear now that if you have a total loss and you decide to replace your home instead of rebuild, you go and buy a new home, you're entitled to your full replacement cost, your full extended replacement cost, which you're calling your extended replacement cost, the protector for 25%, all of your building code upgrade, all the costs that would be necessary to, if you had rebuilt your home, that exact money is available to you to go and purchase your home. And an additional law that we passed about a year ago now also prohibits the insurance company from deducting from that math, from that amount, the value of the land of the new home that you're going to buy, which in the past, some insurance companies were doing that. So you should be able to receive 100% of your benefits, whether you rebuild on your current lot, rebuild on a new lot, or purchase an entirely new home on a different lot.
Okay. And again, on this question of your rights that Tony was just talking about, if you decide to replace your home by buying instead of rebuilding, great information on our website about that. And again, use the search box, buy versus rebuild. We have taught a number of these webinars where we just talk about that. I'm going to do Deborah's question because it also touches on something that Tracy's dealing with. So if there are Colorado folks that may benefit as well from talking about this question. I have questions on the definition of home habitability. I still can't live in my home from the CZU lightning fire because I've got asthma. And how is habitability defined? So, excuse me, Tracy, we teased this out big time last night on the program. It's, the good news is there's a lot of information available about how you properly clean a smoke damaged home. The bad news is standards for habitability. So do you want to speak to that, Tracy?
Yeah, this is a tough one, absolutely, because whether you feel comfortable in your home. So I've always said that if you just have to keep up with the company, right? So if they have a certain level of expert report, sometimes you have to get one as well to counter that, to show that there is something. But these are difficult. Of course, you would call us, right? We would try to get involved. I have to say the commissioner in Colorado is aware of this and is taking action to try to define some of these ambiguous terms. So under today's rule, under today's verbiage, it doesn't say who decides that, nor does it say what it actually means. So I don't know if I have an actual answer. Amy, maybe you can say a little bit more.
Well, I mean, this is Tony, and I'm sure you guys, your department got a lot of complaints from people, from CZU, from last year's fires, that their insurer is pressuring them to cut off their ALE benefits. We've got Paul is asking that question. That insurers were pressuring people to move back into a home they didn't think was safe. So how have you been handling those complaints?
Well, depending on when the fire occurred, I mean, there's a recent law, I think it was July of last year, it was effective, that requires insurance companies to pay additional living expenses, to continue to pay it as long as the home is not habitable, not just in your home, but it could be from lack of power lines up the street, or no water supply, that sort of thing. And if you do have a medical condition, we've had some consumers who've contacted us who have gotten doctor's notes, that they would send to the insurance company, advising the insurance company of either a family member or your medical condition and the sensitivity to smoke and ash, even if it's not just your property, that maybe could have already been remedied or mostly remedied. But if there's still ash in your surrounding neighborhood, that sort of thing. And with the new law, the insurance companies would, in California, the insurance companies would be required to continue their additional living expenses. Now, it's all factual, so it all depends on your particular situation. So we'd have to look at it and see what those facts are and whether that would fall within the law, and what, then we force the insurance company to do what it's supposed to do.
Yeah. So, okay. This one is, let's take one that's fairly straightforward, that's, I know, relevant in all areas. Lindsay asks, can we use COVID price increases and supply chain issues to receive increased benefits? If we pay for contents, why don't we get 100%? Well, okay, let's take the first part. Can you use COVID price increases and supply chain issues to receive increased benefits? I think our view, at least at UP, is that you can, those are good reasons to extend deadlines so that your benefits are available to you for a longer period of time. But getting, having those increase your policy benefits is much tougher. So I guess, Tracy, do you want to say, you could talk about what your agency has done? And then Tony, I know both of your agencies have put out bulletins to what we're encouraging insurers to extend deadlines. Are we mandating?
Well, our commissioner is really invested. So he had a bulletin, which usually doesn't use this strong language, but he directed the companies to extend these. And I believe they're also in our emergency regulation, that they have to toll the statutes, toll the limits if there are issues outside of the insured's control, and to continue even ALE past that. So we're well aware of that. I think only the supply chain increasing the actual money you get for dwelling may come in play only if you don't reach your limit already, right? So it might be in the value of the products that they're writing, but if you're underinsured, that wouldn't really matter. But if you had a policy that was adequate, which we would all hope you did, you would want to make sure that the policy reflected, the estimate reflected that today's costs. So yeah. I think that's what it would come into play.
Yeah, and the issue of, okay, so we can get the insurers to agree to extend deadlines. That's easier usually, to let people have access to their ALE benefits past year 2 in Colorado or year 3 in California. The getting an insurer to pay above limits, it's often requires a lawyer. If you were going to take this argument to the mat about that the extended replacement cost wasn't realistic, it didn't help, it didn't fix the fact that my dwelling limits were set too low in the first place. Those are often lawyer arguments, and we do know, they're tough arguments, but those are tough ones, I think, for a DOI to handle, because it's what we call extra contractual, right? You're asking the insurer to go above the contract, but there's some logic to it, right? I mean, if the argument with underinsurance is often, well, hey, you insurers, you guys are paying claims all the time. That after disasters, things get more expensive and labor costs and everything. How come you haven't fixed that, right? So that's kind of, in a way, a lawyer argument. Tony, anything you wanted to add on the supply chain COVID? You guys put out a bulletin, I know, at least 2, right, on asking insurers to be flexible in light of COVID. Yeah,
and I agree with what Tracy said and what you say. If it's timelines and deadlines and statutes and that sort of thing, those could be extended, and most insurance companies could and should do that. But as you both said, if you're trying to increase your policy limits due to COVID, that's going to be pretty difficult.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so as to if we pay for contents, why don't we get 100%? That's a really big frustrating, right? Again, a lot of logic there, right? I paid for coverage for my contents, everything's gone. Why don't you just pay me my max? And both Tony's agency, well, Tony's agency has done a ton with us, with United Policyholders, to try to pressure insurers to waive the itemization requirement. And there's been a lot there, but it's the legislature has not been willing to act. And so, or the insurers have had their way in the legislature. So the way the law is now, they have to do it willingly. But we are working on legislation in Colorado that would, I think the number right now is 80%, that would have the insurer be required to give you 80% without an inventory. UP offers free tools. If you have to itemize, we offer free tools to help you get every dime, spreadsheets, we have workshops. But Tracy, did you want to speak to that?
I think this is one of the most painful parts of the loss, right? It's so emotional, it's so draining, it lingers on forever. It's just, it's crying out for some kind of solution. I'm very proud of Colorado for pushing this, and I can't wait to see what it looks like in its final, when it's actually becomes law. And I don't know if it's just the timing of things, but we have bipartisan agreement on some of this. So we acknowledge what it is. It's terrible. One thing I will say is, I think I have to change my signature line to read, "Don't leave $1 on the table," because that's what I always say. In the industry meeting a couple of weeks ago, they actually used that to introduce me. So, and that's not something I'm shy of. I'll take that title any day.
Yeah, it definitely, when Colorado passed that law that says that the insurer has to give you 30% and of your contents, I was worrying, that some people would just think, oh, well, that's all I'm going to get. And, and even in California, Tony, worked very hard. We worked very hard together, to get legislation through that would have required insurers to pay you close to your full benefits in the event of a total loss. But we were not able to get it over the finish line. But Tony, if you can explain the way it works in California, it's a little different from Colorado.
Yeah, it's a little complicated, so you don't have to memorize it. But really, it's not 30% of your contents coverage; it's 30% of your dwelling coverage. The insurance company is obligated to pay you up to that amount once you request it, without you having to do an inventory. So it's the math is done by 30% of your dwelling limit, not your contents, but it comes out of your contents coverage, and you don't have to do an inventory. So what it works out to be is 30% of that larger primary dwelling limit could be 60%, 75, 80% of your contents coverage without having to do an inventory. It just depends on how much content you have, what your contents limit is compared to your structure limit.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just get through a few more of these questions. Deborah has asked another question. She said her company has cut off her ALE, and she, I guess she's still fighting the fight. So, that's sort of the point of tonight's program, is like walk through what your options are, right? Tony's great, Tracy's great, their agencies work hard, but they don't have magic wands either. So if your insurer has cut off your ALE before your home is either repaired or rebuilt, then you should file a complaint with the Department of Insurance. If they can't help you, then your options are to go to a lawyer. If you have done all the things that we have suggested, which my guess is you probably have. Anything else for people whose ALE is getting cut off? I mean, we talk about giving the insurer, documentation as to why you're still entitled to the ALE. Any other ideas on getting an insurer to extend ALE?
It may not be significant, but we're looking at if the insurer caused any delay, if they were slow on getting you the estimate, by a month or two, that's going to get tacked on at the end. And again, it may not be a lot, it may not be everything you need, but we're looking for that. And we even find it in the middle of the claim, right? That if they do anything at all to help that process and cause a delay, we would expect them to tack that amount onto the back end of that time frame.
Yeah. Okay. So Tony, what is the best way for people to contact you?
Well, the best way to contact my team would be to call our 800 number and first answer your question, speak to one of our officers, and based on how they triage it of what your situation is and that sort of thing, we'll figure out, we'll give you some advice, or we'll take the case in, assign it to one of our compliance officers, investigate it, try and work with the insurance company to get them to resolve the dispute, and follow the law.
Yep. Okay. Another person in Santa Cruz whose insurer is constantly threatening to cut off their ALE benefits. Santa Cruz County is far from allowing these folks in Paul's area, Last Chance Road and Big Basin, to rebuild. So if you're in a situation like that, I mean, them threatening to cut off ALE benefits when the person is not able to move back in, I would consider that unreasonable conduct. Anything to add on that, Tony?
Yeah, I think as long as you're acting in a reasonable manner, at a reasonable pace, and basically not sitting on your hands and causing the delay, then the insurance company is obligated to continue your additional living expense coverage.
Yeah, and this is why earlier in the program we went through how important it is to journal. How important it is to have that record of not just your cooperation, but their threats. If they were starting to threaten to cut off your ALE, before the county had even, obviously, if the county's not even letting anybody break ground, then you don't have any choice. So again, that's something you should be documenting. And if the Department of Insurance, if your self-help doesn't work and the department has not been able to resolve the situation, that's where you go to a lawyer. But again, if you go to a lawyer, you want to have that record of who said what when. Okay.
If I could just say one thing. So I think it's also very important for you to remain involved or at least aware of your claim, because what I've seen a couple of times is the contractor who you have full faith in to negotiate with your company on the value, sometimes they cause delays. So if it's in the claim notes, and we get claim notes, we get copies of all the emails, if that is still reflective on you, and sometimes you don't know that, so the contractor may be telling you, oh, it's the company. So just to stay aware, because we wouldn't want you to lose 3 or 4 months of ALE just because your contractor didn't submit that final invoice or whatever it may be. So just keep a log of it, stay in touch, find out what's going on would be a good idea, because it could be unintended consequences that you just don't even realize they're happening.
Yep. I mean, obviously it's completely unacceptable for an insurer to make those kind of threats, but because we're hearing it fairly often, we're just, it's happening. It doesn't make it right. So, we're trying to lay out options for trying to deal with it. Okay, James, this is on the buy versus rebuild. Something we touched on earlier. So it's in the last, I would say, I don't know, maybe like 10 years, more and more people have decided, I don't know if I want to rebuild where I was. I would really like to, I'd like to replace my home by buying, and I don't want to leave money on the table. So one of the things that we did to help people deal with that, we went to the legislature, we got a law through that said that the insurer has to honor the full policy benefits for replacing your home, whether you rebuild versus buy. And because in the past, we always had to tell people, if you really want to max out, you got to rebuild. But of course, that's just so hard for many, many people. And it's just not a good option, especially if you, construction project is a big deal, and if you're, advanced in years, or you have any kind of life circumstances, it's not, it may not be the way you want to go. So we do have that law, but even after the law got passed, some insurance companies decided that they were going to say, well, okay, you can replace your home by buying, but we're going to deduct an amount, we're going to set some value for the land under the home you want to buy. So we're not going to give you the full purchase price. And we have been arguing, UP argued for years, that doesn't make sense, because whatever they would have owed you to put that house back, and this is relevant to you, Tracy, because you guys don't have this law yet. So this is a preview. Hopefully insurers are going to come around and stop this nonsense, but some insurers we say, whatever it would have cost to rebuild that house, that's what you owe, toward the purchase of a new house. So you calculate the as was, including code upgrades, including extended coverages, whatever the insurer would have owed you, if you did rebuild, like, kind, and quality of what you had, that's the amount of money that should be available. But because some insurers were continuing to dig their heels in and try to make this deduction, first Tony's agency issued some directives saying you can't do that, we don't agree. Then the legislature had to go back, I think twice, to clarify. And now it's very clear, there's no question about it. But regardless of the fact that the legislature had to go back twice, I still think that we were always right. Logic was always on our side, that is the measure of what they owe you. So if it's still a fight for you, James, that's something that you should be filing a complaint with Tony's agency about. And if it's too much of a legal dispute for them to be able to go the course for you, the distance to get it resolved, that's something you bring to a lawyer. Yeah, anything either of you want to add on that?
Amy, I'll just add that the only kind of distinction here would be if the policyholder is trying to get, let's say, 3 years of additional living expense when they're going to buy a house, because it might not take 3 years to find and move into a house. So you have to, if you are going to buy a house and not rebuild, then you need to keep a really good journal, as Amy said, as to your house hunting process, the escrow process, that sort of thing, because the insurance company is only going to pay in the reasonable amount of time it would take you to locate, find, go through escrow, and move into your home, not the 3 years that theoretically it could take to rebuild the home if you were going to rebuild.
Yeah. Okay, Chris writes that his insurer told him that he only had 20% extended coverage, but then guessing, I think Chris is in California, that your office figured out, so you did something good here, that he actually had 50%. So, and it is illegal for an insurer to withhold benefits that are due. People make mistakes. I suppose that may be their argument. So now he says they're not honoring the 50%. It could be because I don't know if Chris doesn't have a total loss, and maybe the insurer is saying that they don't owe. I think we would need a little bit more information about this before we could really address it. But again, it is a violation of the fair claims practices and the law for an insurer to offer less in settlement than what they owe. So the question here is what remedy can you pursue, and what harm has been done? So Tony, would you say like this is a lawyer thing?
Well, yeah, I mean, I say first, contact UP with your information. Let us go back and take a look at what happened here and look at the facts. If we found that they owed 50% and they're only paying 20, we would want to know why and what's going on there. I mean, that doesn't sound right to us. So I would want to know why. And if there's an issue that we need to correct, then we'll correct it with the insurance company. And if for some reason we can't, then you might think about going to an attorney.
Yeah. So Michelle has sort of a common issue where you've got a contractor's estimate being X and the insurer's estimate being Y, right? I talked about that in the examples. How do you break that log jam? We mentioned earlier, you have your contractor sit down with the adjuster. So they just say, if in this case, Michelle says the insurer is just sort of sticking with their position and not changing. So I'm going to skip through some slides because I want to get to hang on. Okay. We didn't even get a chance to have our deep breath. Okay, so mediation and appraisal are two dispute resolution processes. So I just wanted to mention that in California, well, Tony, if you want to just explain how your program works for mediation. You get in a dispute. Is this for beyond somebody files a complaint and then sometimes you say you can go into our mediation program, right?
Yeah, based on the law, if you are in a dispute after a declared disaster claim, so let's say a wildfire declared disaster, you have a claim and you're in a dispute and it's over $2,500 in dispute. And the first step is file a complaint with the Department of Insurance. If we cannot resolve the dispute, we'll then refer you to the mediation program. It's voluntary on your part. But if you agree, it's mandatory on the insurance company's part, and it's also free to you, the policyholder. The insurance company has to pay for it. And we've hired a number of independent mediators throughout the state in your area, and they will set up a mediation conference and try and bridge the gap and get the parties together. There's been some resolution on some claims. It doesn't resolve every claim, but it does resolve some, and it's free, and it's a good first step prior to having to go to something that'll cost you money, such as public adjuster or an attorney.
Yes, and then there's all mediation. I don't think, Tracy, you guys don't have the Colorado Department doesn't have its own mediation program, right?
No, we don't. One of the things that works for us to sometimes nudge things along, we ask the company to identify where are the discrepancies. So they have to specifically lay it out. And oftentimes it's really not as big as one would think, right? It may be number of hours or price of material. I think when it's isolated like that, it's easier for either a contractor to negotiate or the company to say, well, this is really ridiculous. So that we don't have the tool, the mediation. So we have been using that for a while, and it seems to help. And it helps the consumer because then they can say, to contractor, I don't care. At this point, I don't care. I don't want the 3-inch blinds. Give me 2-inch blinds. I don't care. Right. So it gives I think knowledge is key sometimes. And I think that's helped a lot.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So we've got if one isn't going to rebuild but has not yet purchased a house on another property, can you get your code upgrade and other extended replacement costs? So I think the simple answer is that in order to tap into those buckets in the extended coverage and the code upgrade coverage, you have to do one of two things. You either have to reach an agreement with your insurer on the theoretical cost of replacing your home, including code upgrades, and if it goes above your dwelling limit and makes you eligible to tap into that extended coverage, then either you have to actually establish that you're going to spend that same amount of money buying a house, and once you either are in contract or you reach an agreement with the insurer, they do owe you those additional buckets of money, or you have to have some sort of negotiation with the insurer where they say, okay, we're just going to pay you your money, but that can be very hard, and that's generally if you've got evidence that they were jerking you around, and you've got some leverage there, and you can say, look, I don't want to replace this home at all. I just want to max out my policy. That can be very hard to do without actually replacing the asset. That's something that insurers generally stand pretty firm on. But any other thoughts on that, Tony or Tracy?
The only thing I would add, Amy, is on building code upgrade is always a rubbing, barrier on a lot of claims, because a lot of insurance companies and even the contractor doesn't build in the building code upgrade into their contractor's estimate. It usually comes in stages as they're building and the codes come into play. Those additional costs sometimes are added after the fact, before they're done, but after the original estimate's done. So it's difficult to quantify building code upgrades. So it's important, if you are going to buy a home in another location and you want to max out, to get your contractor to do the best job possible, building in all the building code upgrades that would be eligible on your property, so that you can max out on your building code upgrade coverage.
Yep. So, yeah, Tracy, who knows how this is going to play out in your area, but I mean, with the East Troublesome and the Cameron Peak fires, we have not been hearing from people who've tried to replace by buying and have been told by their insurer that they would be leaving money on the table, but I'm sure that's been happening. I mean, have you had questions come into your agency, people saying, I don't want to rebuild, I want to buy, but I still want to max out?
Very infrequently. I think that was the feeling early on, but then they got a lot of fifth wheels, right? That's how they solved the ALE issue up there. So the companies agreed to get fifth wheel trailers on the site in exchange for ALE, because there was just nowhere to rent. So I think once they got that and they settled in, we didn't have too many people doing that, and we didn't hear about it. So either it went well or it didn't, but they didn't know it didn't. So I hope it's the former, that it went well.
Yep. So Paul asked, you have to buy the home first, or can you settle for the full amount of your policy, including the extended coverage, and buy at a later point? How do you establish the real cash value of your home? Tony, you want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, in order for you to collect above your actual cash value, to get your full replacement cost, get your extended replacement cost, your code upgrade, you actually have to incur the cost. So you can't, in most cases, some companies will negotiate and just pay all those limits and you can go on your merry way. But many companies won't do that. You have to incur the cost. So if you're going to buy a home in another location, then typically what will happen is the insurance company will wait till you're in escrow to then, our position is, once it's in escrow, the insurance company should be putting that money into escrow so that you don't have to then get a loan on the front end and then have to get repaid on the back end after you've closed escrow. But that, it's still new to a lot of insurance companies and to a lot of people. So that is still going to need to be worked out a little bit. But our position is that you shouldn't have to wait for the money, but you do have to incur the cost. And we're buying a new home, you typically would have to go into escrow to then get that additional money from your insurance company.
Because, we had been telling people, if you get like you get that real estate, the description flyer of the house you want to buy, and if the price is equivalent, close to what you lost, or what it would have cost to replace the home that you lost, that can be enough. But I think, as Tony was just saying, as insurers adapt to the new regime, which is you got to give people that flexibility, they're still holding on to this requirement of, we have to be sure that you're spending this money before we commit to giving it to you. Now, is that fair? No. I mean, on some level, it's like, you paid for the benefits they would have owed it to you. What do they care? And, sometimes insurers actually can cash people out, but it's the rare occasion. They generally will stick to their long-standing rule that you have to replace the asset to get fully reimbursed. So how do you establish the real cash value of your home? That's all about that. We cover that in the scoop on scope. That's all about basically getting a reasonably detailed estimate of like, kind, and quality rebuilding the house that you had. And unfortunately, sometimes that it's very hard to get that kind of an estimate prepared free of charge, and sometimes you have to pay somebody to do that. And again, we've done a lot of programs on this, and I would really recommend that you use our website and watch one of them on Scoop on Scope. Okay, I submitted a builder's exactment estimate for code upgrades. They rejected the majority and responded that I had a nice house and probably already had those code upgrades. If I can prove that I didn't already have specific upgrades, they would reconsider adding them as code upgrades. Is it my responsibility to prove that upgrades were not present? Tracy, you want to take a crack at that?
I would think so. Like, we're getting that too, because we had some homes that are really new, fairly new, and they already had the upgrades. So I think that you would have to prove your loss. It would be tough, right? In some cases, some of these are hidden. You're not going to get on your inspection report something about the R value of the insulation, most likely, and things like that. So as tough as it is, I think that you would need to prove it.
Yep. I have to say I agree with that. Ray is asking, will the new Colorado legislation apply to 2020 Cameron Peak fire? So we're a long way from the legislation being put into place, unfortunately. I think it's just getting introduced this week. We always try to get it retroactive. It almost never happens. But what I think that the commissioner and his team are committed to, and is working, trying to get insurers to voluntarily do these things that we're asking them to do. So, just as the California department put pressure on insurers to relax the itemization requirement and pay contents benefits, the Colorado agency is doing the same thing. So I would say very unlikely that the 2020 folks are going to be able to say this law applied. Just that's the reality in legislation. It's very hard to make it retroactive. Anything either of you want to add on that?
I would love for it to be retroactive. I mean, that would just make me smile, but no, I don't think it's going to be, just for those very reasons. So, but I think that they'll always be in your debt, because it was those folks who suffered through that will make this happen.
So Lucretia says she had her first floor flooded in December. And after contacting many agents and FEMA, no adjuster has contacted us. Tony, I'm guessing, I don't know where this person is. I shouldn't hit you first, but if somebody
Northern California.
If you're just getting, I mean, no action there, it sounds like that's something that they should come to your agency with.
Yeah, I mean, we could take a look at it. We got to see if you have insurance and if you have flood insurance, and if it was flooded and you had flood insurance, those claims, although they're handled by an insurance company, they're actually overseen by FEMA, the National Flood Insurance Program. And so we could ferret it out, look at it, and see who has jurisdiction, and whether it's something we could look at, or whether we could refer you to one of our contacts at FEMA on the National Flood Program.
Okay, so her second question about who monitors FEMA flood insurance adjusters in Norcal, I guess you kind of answered that. So you guys tag team with the NFIP?
Yeah, we would take a look at it and see it, but for the most part, if they're FEMA adjusters on the National Flood Insurance Program, flood insurance, they would oversee those adjusters.
Okay. Betsy says, my insurance company rejected mediation. I thought they were required to attend. Tony, can you speak to that?
Yeah, I assume that's California.
I assume.
We would have to look at it and see. They can only reject for a couple of reasons. Number one, if it's a legal issue, they can reject. Number two, if it's an underinsurance issue, they're not obligated to go to mediation. If it's a traditional claim dispute over the coverage amount, then they they cannot refuse to go to mediation. So if it's something that you think is still eligible based on kind of the parameters I just described, let us know and we'll take a look at it and go back to the company if necessary.
Okay. Okay. So Chris, I know you've asked a couple questions related. We've answered a few, but it sounds like, so you have a partial loss, and State Farm is refusing to extend your ALE. And I think we talked about, and that you've given every reason that we've listed as valid to extend it, but they're still not refusing. So that's if you have filed a complaint with the department and they have not been able to resolve it, you can, if you qualify for their mediation program, that would be a way to go. If you don't qualify, I highly recommend that you confer with an attorney. And I'm hoping we'll have just another couple minutes to get to a few more slides to sort of talk a little bit about that option of going to a lawyer and what happens with that. James, similar, insurers threatening to cut off ALE, but the lack of progress is not his fault because the insurer is refusing to respond. Very similar, right? If the insurer is engaging in conduct that's making it impossible for you to replace your home, then your remedies are, if your self-help hasn't worked and going up the chain and, making your case in writing hasn't worked, and filing a complaint with the department hasn't gotten the situation resolved, then the next step is to talk to a lawyer. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. And before we do talk about what would be involved if you were to go to a lawyer, my insurance company said they would pay me rent if I bought a trailer to live in while I'm rebuilding. After they paid me the value, $18K, they wouldn't pay me any more rent. I parked the RV on the damaged property. Am I entitled to more? So that's a tricky one, because, and it's pretty common, a lot of people these days, housing is in short supply, and, buying a fifth wheel or using your ALE to buy a nice RV is a good option for folks, especially if you want to be near the property while it's getting repaired or rebuilt. But it can cut off your ALE because you're not paying any rent anymore. And typically ALE is paid on an as incurred basis. Anything from the two of you on that?
Yeah, we had, this sounds familiar. So they would owe you your out-of-pocket expenses. So they would owe you up to that $18,000, out to the cost of the trailer and the hookups and everything else. But remember, ALE is not just rent; it's other things too. So keep that in mind. Some of these fifth wheels, they don't have laundry, so you have to go to laundry, and you might think that's not a lot of money, but $15 a week or so, whatever it may be, those add up. Maybe you can't cook as much because it's smaller. So a lot of folks, they focus on the rent, but there's really anything above and beyond what you would pay if you were living in your home is eligible for ALE. So don't let those costs go by.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, again, it's supposed to be, you're entitled to maintain your standard of living, right? Comparable size, etc. So if the RV is not a comparable size, what do you think, Tony? Is there redress? Because I do know that buying a temporary residence can cut off your ALE.
Yeah, it's a difficult one because you're negotiating with your company for them to purchase upfront, like a fifth wheel or an RV to put on your property, which is a little different than incurring monthly expenses and turning in those receipts. And so because you've kind of gone outside the contract already and negotiated some kind of different thing there than what's traditionally done, I don't know that you can hold the insurance company to, I have a 4-bedroom home and my fifth wheel's only, 2 beds that I have to, unfold or whatever it might be. I don't know that you could hold them to comparable in that situation. And I also think there's additional living expense, but embedded in that question could have been also fair rental value. So if the policyholder chose fair rental value as the option instead of additional living expenses, they would be eligible for the cost that their home would have rented for the entire duration of the rebuild. But again, getting more than that up front by your insurance company was an accommodation. So in theory, they can stop paying you that amount. Had you not gotten them to pay up front, for example, the $18,000 and got your $2,500 or $3,000 a month, you probably could have continued to do that and then just bought your RV on your own. That's one way to avoid getting that ALE or fair rental value cut off.
Yeah. Yeah. This is something I think we're going to want to do some maybe creative thinking on, because there we are encouraging people to use, be creative in finding places to live. But, I mean, it's nice that you have a nice RV, but, if in a lot of the folks in the Santa Cruz Mountains have this problem of like, they literally cannot move forward because there just still are safety issues and, health and safety issues with in the mountains there that the county just hasn't been able to resolve, I guess. So yeah, I think if you can sort of continue to negotiate that this is not the equivalent, in some way. So I do want to quickly go through. I don't, we're not going to be able to have take any more questions, but we got through all of them, which is great. But I want to just quickly get through some of the key slides just to give folks this kind of general overview. So mediation, you've heard in California, the department has a program, but mediation is a thing everywhere. So it's a way of resolving disputes, and your community may have a mediation program, or if you go to a lawyer, it may be they may say, well, we're going to go through, let's try mediation first. So appraisal, I didn't really hear anything tonight that sounded like it might want to go into an appraisal. Except for the one with with the inconsistent estimates, and that can sometimes have to, if the fight over how much it's going to cost to rebuild the house gets too if the fight just can't be resolved, then there is something called appraisal, where it's a term of art to insurance. It's different from a real estate appraisal. It's like a mini dispute resolution process. So it is an option. This is how it works. And it's very hard to do it on your own. This is but if all you have in the only dispute you have with the insurance company is over how much it should cost to replace your home, appraisal can be a really good option if you just haven't been able to break that log jam. So just to wrap up, types of professional help outside of government or a nonprofit like us. A licensed attorney, you would only want to hire one on contingency as a policyholder, because rarely works to have to pay a lawyer by the hour to help you with an insurance problem. A public adjuster can help you establish the value of your loss and negotiate with the insurer. Their fees are typically 7 to 15% of what they collect. Same thing with the lawyer. It's the contingency fee. It's the key to the courthouse for people who have limited financial means, and in the professional that you hire, you don't pay them up front. You pay them a cut of what they recover for you. So it's a decent option in some circumstances. If you really are in a situation where there's enough money on the table that you just have not been able to resolve. So we talked earlier about if you have this discrepancy between an exactimate estimate that an adjuster has put together and an estimate that a real life builder has put together. And you need help really proving that your that the contractor's estimate is the right one. Sometimes you have to pay those folks, and about $4,000, $5,000 is kind of the going price for getting a really, really comprehensive estimate. If you end up with no choice but to file suit against an insurance company, it's always good to check with an attorney 24 months after, before the 24-month mark, after your loss, just so that you don't run into any lawsuit deadlines. And of course, there's different ways to go about a lawsuit. You can do it on your own, or you can do it with a group of people. So for example, I know a lot of people, a bunch of people banded together after the CZU fire to sue an insurer over their refusal to handle people's refrigerator claims. And, because it doesn't make sense for, there's not enough money at issue with one refrigerator claim to file a lawsuit. If you get together with other people, that can be more viable. So for those of you who are getting threatened to have your ALE cut off, could be something to consider of getting together and hiring a lawyer to do a group suit. Okay, so again, we missed our deep breaths, but I'm trying to get us out of here at the just around an hour and a half. I think, this is such a difficult time for all of you, and getting sleep is important. Trying to stay calm is important, and I hope that we've given you good guidance tonight. We brought together two really special, compassionate public servants that really take all this work very seriously, and I and my team take it all very seriously, and we really feel for your situations and wish we had easy answers for all these questions. There's no question that the system could be so much better, and we are all working toward that. Removing some of these obstacles, making it, getting insurers to handle these catastrophe claims differently. There's no question of fault here. You clearly were not at fault. So getting the money to flow faster and better is a goal that we all share. So I'm not going to go into anything more on the deck here, but just know that we put together, this is the library for Colorado. It's always there for you night and day. We're updating it on a regular basis. Same thing for those of you who may be from Oregon or Washington. We have set up these libraries for you. Here are some of the webinars we've offered in the past that you may want to watch. And that sort of hit on some of, obviously, these are a lot of the main issues that came up tonight. ALE, buying versus rebuilding. What do I do if I'm underinsured? Lots of guidance in our library for free that we really encourage you to use. Another free resource are survivor to survivor forums. A great way to kind of remind yourself that you're not alone here on this journey, that there's other people that are on the road to recovery with you, even though they may not be in your area. And we've brought together some of our trained volunteers who've been there, done that. And really, no one understands your challenges and emotions like another person who's gone through a catastrophic loss. And we try to, we provide this forum for you to sort of convene with those folks. This is our upcoming schedule of events. You can see we've got next week some clinics, and then I think our next Survivor to Survivor, it will be February, I'm gonna say February 1st, I believe. that right, Val? You still,
I'm looking now.
I believe it's February
Yes,
1st.
it's February 1st. Yes.
So here's the California departments, again, their toll-free number. Here is the Oregon toll-free number for the agency there. There, Colorado, again, Washington State. And I want to thank the funders that are making it possible for us to provide these services to you, and then let you know that this slide deck and this recording will be available on our website within a couple days. And at the end of the deck, Val put together a really nice list of some of the laws and regulations in your state to kind of make it easy for you to reference some of the important ones. I'm not going to go through them now, but just know that they are in this deck. You know, these are some of the important laws in California, some of the special rules that have been put into place. This is actually a list of the insurance companies that had agreed in California to pay to pay contents benefits without an inventory. So you can reference these either on our website by looking at the deck that goes with tonight's program. So I just want to thank our speakers so much from the bottom of my heart, Tony and Tracy, you know, working after hours, going the distance, working with our organization. You are such important partners to us. And to those of you at the end there who might not have gotten your question answered, we are always happy to try to help. We will be having, you know, we have these programs on a regular basis, and you can go to our website and go to the events page and find them. And boy, I kind of look like a ghost here. I wish you all a safe and a peaceful evening, rest of your evening. We are rooting for you so hard on your journey and doing our best to help you navigate this process. So Tony, Tracy, Val, Carolyn, thank you so much for your participation in tonight's program. Have a good evening.